So the Democrats are running on the strategy that Joe Biden is the real problem. It's all a comms issue if we just replace. So they have a backup strategy. If it's all a comms issue, there's one way that we can change this, and that is we can prevent anyone else from getting out their alternative message. So the Democrats are going back to the drawing board with their friends in the media, but I repeat myself, their new message is everything we don't like is disinformation. When I say new, I mean it's the same old message. Everything we don't like is disinformation. So the New York Times has a very long piece about the victimized, horribly victimized Nina Jankowicz. Now, you remember that she was the head of the Biden administration disinformation board, this dystopian feature of the Homeland Security Department that was going to look at misinformation and disinformation, had a very broad mandate. It was unclear what it was going to do. This entire article from the New York Times is about how so many people here are engaging in disinformation about this woman, Nina Jankowicz, but they can't name a single piece of disinformation that was put out about her. According to the New York Times, there's wide agreement across the federal government that coordinated disinformation campaigns threaten to exacerbate public health emergencies, stoke ethnic and racial divisions, and even undermine democracy itself. The board's fate, however, has underscored how deeply partisan the issue has become in Washington, making it nearly impossible to consider addressing the threat. The failure to act, according to experts, if I can cite anonymous experts, it must be true. According to experts, has left openings for new waves of disinformation ahead of November's midterm elections, and even for violence, like the racist massacre at a Buffalo supermarket in May, which was motivated by a baseless conspiracy theory that global forces aimed to replace white Americans with immigrants. I think we're in a really bleak situation here in this country, said Nina Jankowicz, who briefly served as the board's director before resigning when the controversy boiled over. A prominent author and researcher in the field of disinformation who once advised Ukraine's government, Ms. Jankowicz became a focus of the Führer, targeted online by false or misleading information about her role in what critics denounced as a ministry of truth. It's hard to imagine how we get back from this, she said in an interview, when this is how our elected representatives are behaving, when we can't agree on, what is the truth. Okay, she still has not named a lie, and nobody in this article actually names a lie that was told about her. The threats from disinformation today, says the New York Times, involve issues that not long ago might have transcended partisan politics. Instead, disinformation has become mired in the country's deepening partisan and geographical divides over issues like abortion, guns, and climate change. I have a question. When was there ever agreement about abortion, guns, and climate change? Like in my entire lifetime, there has not been. Even during the Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security recognized the threat. So the goal here of the New York Times is, if we can label everything we don't like disinformation, then we can ban all of that stuff. And we can lament the disinformation used to prevent the government from banning all of that stuff without actually naming any of the disinformation. The singular fact that they cannot point to, and we all know why Nina Jankowicz went away. The reason is because she had a long history of being a wild leftist on social media, including doing bizarre Mary Poppins skits talking about disinformation, promoting the notion that the Russian laptop was not, that Hunter Biden's laptop was in fact a Russian laptop, promoting the Alpha Bank lie. And so there's a lot about Nina Jankowicz that was really worthy of scrutiny. But according to the New York Times, all of that was bad. It is no coincidence, by the way. The New York Times is pushing the idea that the government must crack down on disinformation while actively purveying disinformation. One of those aspects of actively purveying disinformation is to try and fight back against the fact that Republicans are now doing really, really well with Hispanics. So if you look at the polling data right now, Joe Biden has about a 35% approval rating with Hispanics. And this is freaking the hell out of the Democratic Party, because the Democratic Party had counted on a rising coalition of racial minorities, plus a few college-educated white ladies, in order to win a permanent majority in Congress and in the presidency. And as it turns out, Hispanics do not want to be categorized as just another racial group that can be counted in the Democratic Party playbook. Instead, it turns out many Hispanics, and many black people, as it turns out, most Americans, as it turns out, like to be thought of as individuals who have their own thoughts, dreams, and hopes, and wish to actually vote on the basis of those. But the New York Times is going to crack down on this. So while they are saying disinformation is bad, they are now purveying disinformation about Representative Mayra Flores. They have an entire piece today in the New York Times by Jennifer Medina called The Rise of the Far-Right Latina. The rise of the far... So first of all, what happened to LatinX? What happened to LatinX? These intolerant bigots? Don't they know Latina is sexist? Okay, but apparently she's very, very far-right. And here is what the New York Times says. For years, Texas Republicans tried to win the Hispanic vote using a Bush-era brand of compassionate conservatism. The idea was that a moderate's touch and a softer rhetoric on immigration were key to making inroads with Hispanic voters, particularly in Democratic strongholds across the southern border. Such was the Texas of old. The Trump age has given rise to a new brand of Texas Republicans, one of whom is already walking the halls of Congress, the far-right Latina. Far-right Latina. Everyone's far-right, by the way. Everyone. There's not a single they can't define the definition between quote-unquote mainstream right and far-right, because to the left, everybody is far-right. Representative Mayra Flores became only the second Republican to represent the Rio Grande Valley after she won a special election last month and flipped the congressional seat from blue to red. What is most striking is that Ms. Flores won by shunning moderates, embracing the far right, and wearing her support for Donald Trump on her sleeve. Her campaign slogan, God, Family, Country, was meant to appeal to what she calls traditional values of her majority Hispanic district on the border city of Brownsville. She called for President Biden's impeachment. She tweeted QAnon hashtags. By the way, when they say tweeted QAnon hashtags, that means her social media team included one hashtag of QAnon in one post on Facebook, so far as I'm aware. And this means that she must be some sort of conspiracy theorist because she included one hashtag in one Facebook post ever. She called the Democratic Party the greatest threat America faces. So I have a question. What makes that far right? And the Democratic Party routinely calls the Republican Party the greatest threat America faces. Joe Biden says that Republicans are a threat to democracy. This New York Times piece is saying that far-right Republicans are a threat to democracy. So what exactly is so extreme about her? They can't name a single thing. In an interview in her still barren office the day after her swearing in, Flores was asked whether she considered Biden the legitimately elected president. Quote, he's the worst president of the United States, she said. When asked 3 more times, she repeated the same non-answer. Okay, and? So she said he's bad. I'm unaware that saying that he's a very terrible president makes you a far-right person. 2 other Latina Republicans, Monica de la Cruz in McAllen and Cassie Garcia in Laredo, are also on the ballot in congressional races along the Mexican border. All 3 share right-wing views on immigration, the 2020 election, and abortion. Oh my gosh. Wow. You mean that they're Republicans? That's crazy. Republicans are Republicans and are also Hispanic, but are Republican? Wow, but we have to crack down on disinformation, guys. There's too much disinformation out there, according to the New York Times. Who's got 2 thumbs and wants you to like and subscribe?